And welcome to the New England Job Show. My name is Brian Henchy. With us today is Mark McCurdy. He's the author of the book Strategic Volunteering, 50 Ingredients to Transform Your Life and Career. He's the founder of the nonprofit Career Coach and managing partner of Scion Nonprofit Staffing. As an author, executive recruiter, and trainer in the nonprofit sector, Mark has helped over 4,000 professionals find their purpose within nonprofit organizations, as well as help hundreds of social good organizations to discover strategic employees. Mark McCurdy, welcome to the New England Job Show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. So first of all, what did you do before you started Scion Nonprofit Staffing? What were you doing with your life prior to that?
Prior to that, I was actually working at a nonprofit as a career coach. So I was working with an organization called The Workplace.
Okay.
So there's three career workforce centers in Boston, and The Workplace being one of them. So I worked with them for about a year and a half, helping individuals with their vocational aspirations.
Good. What caused you to write the book?
So in 2008, I'd moved back home from Washington, D.C., and at that time, I'd opened my own company called Jobs and Nonprofits. And so that organization was focused on connecting individuals with nonprofits, and that's generally my background, kind of helping find human capital for nonprofits. I'd done that in New York, as I mentioned, D.C., and then moved back to do that here in Boston. And in 2008, I wouldn't have to tell you, obviously, the economy wasn't doing as hot as it had in the past.
Yes.
So from that experience, the business really not taking off as I thought it should, I became depressed. I started myself becoming depressed and wondering, God, what am I going to do with my career next? And I really turned to volunteering myself. And that really helped me kind of put me back on track, and ultimately led me back into career coaching and counseling, and as of today, also led me into Scion Staffing, Scion Nonprofit Staffing. So I'll probably tell you a little bit more on that later, but that's the short story.
So one thing that I know that you talk about is something called strategic volunteering.
Right.
Now, I had never heard that phrase until talking with you, so can you tell our viewers what is strategic volunteering? How does that differ from just plain volunteering?
Sure. And obviously plain volunteering is wonderful, and not something I'd all put down, and I do it myself as well. But when thinking about kind of your career, or even perhaps some different life challenges, there can be a strategy that you can look at to really help you to that next level. And for me, obviously, well, not obviously, but for me it was really career focused, and that's for the most part where the book is focused as well. And really thinking about a strategy that you'll think about, write down some really important questions to ask yourself, and once you go through answering those questions, then what emerges is really a strategy of where you might want to look to volunteer.
So what are a few of those questions, for example?
Sure. So ingredient, I call it really kind of recipe number one in the book, is really about passion, right? So what are you really passionate about? And normally when you're doing a job search, it's not a question that historically comes up frequently. And so this is kind of ingredient number one that you really want to look at to say, well, yeah, what am I really excited about? And sometimes this is thinking about, well, what kind of hobbies am I doing? Strategic volunteering certainly can play out significantly in the nonprofit sector, but it doesn't have to. I worked with an individual who loved beer. That was something he was very excited about. And ultimately, in asking these questions, kind of putting the strategy into place, he actually found a job working with the brewery.
Wow.
Yeah.
May I just stop to ask you,
Sure.
Was this by any chance with the volunteer organization called Harpoon Helps that he got involved with and then started working for Harpoon? I'm just curious.
I don't believe so.
Okay, just curious, because I don't do a lot of volunteering, to be perfectly frank, but I've been involved with Harpoon Helps, and they do a lot of things for cancer research and a bunch of other things. So, but anyway, so passion, what are your interests? What other sort of questions, ingredients do you get into?
Exactly. Another big one is really purpose, and for me it's really about thinking about what's the community or population that you really would like to serve, and or to rethink about that question is saying what community or population do you want to see their dreams come true. And so again, it's just kind of rethinking a little bit about where that might be for you. And kind of the beauty about this whole ingredients is as you change as an individual, conceivably your recipes are going to change as well. So what I might be really passionate about today certainly may change 10 years from now, and that's okay. This isn't to say find your destiny, and this is what you're going to do necessarily the rest of your life. For some, that certainly could be the case, but for others it may be, this is a great next step, really an empowering move, not only for myself, but actually to help other individuals, and that's really key to the equation is, really feeling as though, hey, you're helping individuals, you've chosen to help these individuals, and really feeling as though, that you're worthwhile, and that, that you can serve and really make a difference.
So take me as an example here. If I want to help out, let's say, military organizations with military families, what would be, if I'm passionate about, helping out these wonderful families that, give up so much of their own selves to help, ordinary Americans, what are some things that I would do to, I know that that's what I'm passionate about, but what would be sort of like my first few steps there to get going on figuring out what I can do to help them
Some
out?
ideas. Obviously, even starting there with asking some of these questions, but secondly is certainly doing some research. And there might be some interesting avenues that actually do turn up for you. So just as a small example, there's an organization called Bikes Not Bombs. They're out of Jamaica Plains. And you might not think initially, how is that related to military? Well,
Yeah, explain that one.
What they're really about is, it's looking at a little slight different strategy and some different organizations that may ultimately have a very similar link. So it may be looking at organizations that maybe work very closely with the military, whether it be here or different militaries abroad. And so here's an organization that is kind of hooked on to a larger entity, so that being perhaps military.
Because I've thought about if I want to be involved with the Fisher House, which helps to take care of the families of loved ones going through, or military men and women who are going through rehab, something that I could do to help out the Fisher House, but I'm always wondering, I have no idea even how to get started, but other than to contact them and say, I have all these, different skills, what can I do to help you? So, but anyway, but less about me for a moment. I want to ask you about strategic volunteering. When you've helped out so many people, so can you give us some examples of, the economy's been really bad, and people who watch the New England Job Show know that it's been a bad economy the last few years. Can you give us a few examples of things that, that interactions you've had with clients that have really benefited them?
Definitely. One example that comes to mind is a woman who was making a career transition from really the finance industry into the nonprofit sector. And when we started kind of asking some of these questions about, what are you really passionate about? What came to mind is, God, you know what? I'm really passionate about healthy food. It's something where I've kind of brought up my family that way, and something I read regularly. I love to learn more about it. And then as we looked at, well, what's the community or population that you really want to serve? It came down to, what? I really feel drawn towards the low income. And so when we kind of put those two things together, it was looking at organizations that might be incorporating food along with helping the low income community. And so I was able to come up with a few names of organizations. She was able to come up with a few organizations, and then she contacted these organizations and just said, you know what, I found you guys, I'd love to learn more, can I come in and talk to someone? And ultimately what that led to is 5 meetings that took place, and ultimately she decided on a nonprofit out in Metro West, and this was an organization that basically had a food pantry and was focused on the low-income community, and she started volunteering there. Really enjoyed it. She came up actually herself kind of with this idea of providing basically a recipe table. So as you come into the food pantry, which normally the case is you kind of come in and get out, not a place of community necessarily. Well, it is community, but as a sense of as far as people really staying there and sticking around and talking to each other. Well, now with this recipe table, individuals would come through and say, "Wow, what's the recipe of the week?" And so they'd come, they'd look, and they could actually taste some of these recipes, and 90% of the ingredients were at the food pantry, and everyone really liked it. Everyone really enjoyed it. And this was an idea that she came up with as a volunteer. One thing led to another, and she was probably there about 6 or 7 weeks, and a manager position opened up at the food pantry.
Perfect.
And guess who got the job?
Wow.
She got the job. Now, obviously, can this happen in every instance? No. But what's really important is that she took initiative. It wasn't someone telling her about this opportunity and she said, "Oh, all right, let me check them out." She actually searched them out, found them under certain criteria, and then gave a call and said, "Look, I found you all. I'd love to learn more." And then, again, she took action and got in there, started volunteering. And then she came up with a really creative idea that really helped this population, right? And so, as an employer, they said, "Wow, here's someone that searched us out, who came up with some really creative ideas, who's really helping the community, and clearly she gets the environment. She knows what she's getting into." And so it was, I think, a very comfortable and kind of natural progression, that she ended up, being a permanent employee, with this organization.